Hello, everyone. My name is Ana Valdivia, and I'm presenting this paper on Datafication genealogies co-authored together with Martina Tazzioli. Meyer-Sangenberg and Cookier coined the term datification, arguing that to datify a phenomenon is to put it in a quantified format so it can be tabulated and analyzed. Yet, datification is not only about translating social phenomena and people into data. It is also about crafting racialized subjects. Far from being a neutral and objective mechanism, classification has historically served for constructing, recording, and classifying individuals through racialized profiles. This paper argues that first, classification per se should not be narrowed to digitalization and thus to algorithmic discrimination. An exclusive focus on algorithmic fairness de-historicizes classification as a recent phenomenon and conceptualizes social injustice in terms of automated discrimination. Second, it contends that critiques of racial categories in algorithmic fairness should move forward by considering classification as an historical mechanism that also reproduces racial profiling. The production of racialized subjects through classification does not necessarily require an algorithmic process or a racial filter. This paper retraces a genealogy of classification by looking at the ways in which people's mobility has been classified in the colony and at the border before the digitalization era. Specifically, we focus on two case studies that foreground how classification historically has been used to produce racialized subjects as well as racialized hierarchies of mobility. The British Empire profiling through biometrics and statistical methods in the colony and police identification practices at the French-Italian border. The border is the site per excellence at which classification is enacted by state authorities to identify people and to multiply hierarchies of undesired mobility. Our paper contributes to the fact community by illustrating the importance of situating digital classification processes within a longer history that also considers analog classification. Indeed, the racialized mechanisms of classification cannot merely be reduced to algorithmic-driven procedures, nor to racial categories embedded in datasets. This paper intervenes in debates about the datification of mobility, showing that the reproduction of hierarchies of mobility in the colony and at the border is paradigmatic of how datification has been used to enforce racializing processes. Classification serves to multiply racialized bordering mechanisms and hierarchies of mobility. By focusing on the social political context, it's possible to grasp how individuals at times manage to dodge, twist, or hack modes of identification through classification. Instead of asking how colonized subjects or migrants are datified in the colony and at the border, it is a question of shifting attention towards how individuals have been enacted as colonized subjects or migrants through identification and classification, which rely on datifying procedures such as fingerprints. Despite the attention that biometric systems have presently attracted in current debates on surveillance and migration control, scientific methods have been developed since the 19th century to datify and extract patterns of colonized and marginalized subjects by states and empires. Through colonization, Britain extracted resources and imposed ways of governing on its colonized territories. Francis Galton, a Victorian scholar, played a key role in this scenario by quelling biometrics, statistics, and anthropomorphic measurements for the making of a civic society. Galton studied the use of fingerprints for classifying human races and identification and search purposes. Arguing that individuals in the colonies were illiterate, disabled, or similar looking, he advocated for the use of fingerprints to enhance to efficiency of identification processes in the British colonies. Moreover, this archive brings evidence of the connection between science, racism, and the British Empire through the datification of human bodies that began at the colony and was extended to the birth of eugenics. In the 19th century, datification of bodies and other socioeconomic features were instrumentalized by scientists and states by imposing their despotic theories and rules to govern undesirable and marginalized subjects, an effect that undoubtedly resonates with nowadays large-scale biometrics databases for migration control in the European border region.
So the French-Italian border has historically been a key crossing point since 1861, when the frontier between France and Italy was established, and it progressively became a highly policed frontier. Illegalized border crossers from different nationalities started to be systematically identified and classified by the French police at the Italian border in the late 20s, and in a more robust way in the late 30s, with the arrival of Jewish escapees from Eastern Europe. The unauthorized border crossers at that time were Italian fugitives, such as communists, socialists, partisans, but also Italian workers without permit to expatriate, Jewish refugees, and in the 50s and in the 60s, political descendants from Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, and Yugoslavia. In the 70s, the first migrants from North African countries and from the Middle East had been found by the French police, as well as by both Italian and French mountain rescuers. In this paper, we draw on archival records to retrace how the unauthorized border crossers were identified at the border after being stopped by the French police. Importantly, the genealogy of datification of migrant mobility at the French-Italian borders that can be retraced depends on the data that authorities collect and extracted from unauthorized border crossers, and therefore is a partial and incomplete genealogy. Indeed, in the past, like nowadays, many migrants were not detected by the police, and therefore their passage does not appear in the archive. It is worth noticing that police practices of racialization through classification do have a consolidated colonial genealogy, both in the colonies and in France, towards former colonized populations such as Algeria. Hence, a genealogical approach foregrounds historical partial continuities between racialization and datification at the border and in the urban post-colonial states. The datification of an unauthorized border crosser conducted by the French police in the last centuries was quite similar to the current procedure. Indeed, the identification form filled by the French police officers included personal data of migrants, reason for going to France, job skills, and income figures. Nevertheless, datification of undesired mobility at the border should not lead us to conclude that the state authorities conduct exhaustive control and registration practices. On the contrary, both nowadays and in the present and in the past, this is characterized by partial no recording and no registration. So datification has been historically enforced by national states to identify undesirable and deceitful subjects and to make them reliable and knowledgeable. This is nowadays strengthened through the use of large-scale systems implemented at the border to control migration and to block people on the move. Alongside these quantitative shifts, it generated also qualitative ones. For instance, algorithmic datification enforced new modes of discrimination based on factors that work as indirect indicators and markers, and that are the result of recombinant identity. Second, algorithmic datification is eminently future-oriented. So, to conclude, this paper has drawn attention to the racialization mechanisms that datification has historically generated. Datification processes did not start with the rise of digitalization and artificial intelligence, although it is not a matter of full continuity between past and present. A genealogical approach has highlighted partial continuities and shifts between analog and digital datification. Our genealogical approach invites the past community to move beyond the techno-focused critique of algorithmic unfairness and to situate the analysis on bias and discrimination within a broader account of the exclusionary laws and policies that datification is used for by the state. So this paper does not offer policy recommendation, nor does it endorse a problem-solving approach. On the contrary, it suggests that instead of focusing exclusively on criticizing algorithmic bias, critical scholars should revert the standpoint by scrutinizing how specific datification mechanisms are put in place to enforce exclusionary legal political measures and that are not rooted in history. Thank you very much.